Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at a painting I did yesterday. It's still fresh on the brain, so I thought I'd make a quick video going over it. Alright, so, like last time, I begin with a quick sort of, actually this time's a little bit different because I jump kind of straight into the photo bashing. I had a little bit of a vignette around the outside to give, I guess, a better concept of the composition. I'm not entirely sure yet at this point, where my focal point's gonna be, so I'm just adding I'm basically just going in with photo textures to create a really quick sort of environment. So at this point, I've added this sort of foreground element, like almost like a little land bridge, I guess. And then I'm gonna go in and start painting over stuff, basically. Here I want some trees on the side. I don't think I end up keeping all of those, but I start building up areas in the composition to sort of support the focal point. So far, I think most of the painting is on 2 layers. I have basically the photo texture layer as a base, and then I have a paint over layer where I'm going in and sort of adding these clouds where the trees are. Actually, I think the clouds and the trees are going to be on their own layer. And now I'm going to go in. I want a sort of castle in the background, so I'm going to go in with more photo textures to sort of get that started. I have a bunch of just sort of generic cathedral type gothic architecture here from my photo texture folder. I'm not really going in for anything specific, so I'm just throwing stuff together. And then what you'll see me do is I'm going to merge everything together, and then I'll start merging it into the background a bit. I'll sort of unify the color, get rid of the color completely. Add some little light highlights just to make it look like there's, multiple buildings there. I'm going to fill in the color a bit, throw it behind the trees. I think I end up putting it on the other side. Yeah, there we go. I kind of got rid of the texture on accident, so I think I go back in with some more photo textures of these buildings just to add a little bit of something back into them. You can get away with doing just the silhouette, but I kind of wanted to add a little bit of something in there again, so I just go in with an overlay filter, I think, and then I erase part of it. So it kind of looks like, it's sort of shrouded in the background, but you can see the very front details that are being kind of hit by the scene lighting. I want to increase the size of that tower at a point of interest, because before all the towers were sort of the same height. I'm going in to just get rid of all the sort of mess from the photo textures. A little bit more highlighting. At this point, when you use photo textures this heavily, the most important thing is making them work with the actual paintings you're doing. So just merging everything really consistently is really important. Adding some highlights. This sort of foreground scene is lit very narrowly there's a sort of strip of light there, so I wanted to play a bit with that, almost like there's a break in the clouds where the light's coming through and hitting the ground there. Funny thing with my paintings is I always take forever to get to actually painting the focal point. I know most people will sketch everything out and then start painting with that, but I like to get the scene set up first and then go in and figure out where my character is going to be, or my creature, whatever it ends up being. There we go. I just block everything in. I wanted it to be a cloaked figure, sort of maybe stalking these buildings over here. Adding some horns to make it a little bit more interesting than just a shrouded figure. And right now I'm kind of playing around with how I want it to look. Mainly just adding fun little details like these sort of tendrils that are coming off the back. And then here I end up getting rid of most of the foreground trees, because what I end up doing is actually just making one big tree. Compositionally, I didn't like how all the small little twiggy trees looked. It sort of fit the swamp, the sort of marsh look, but I thought it'd be cool to have this figure sort of standing behind, maybe skulking behind this big nasty gnarled tree. And like I mentioned before, there's the little highlight that I wanted to continue on from the ground up to the tree a little bit. And adding the tree to the composition sort of helps here with framing our main character, who is mostly silhouetted in the scene. And then of course when you add your foreground elements, you have to make sure to go in and blend. Oh, there's the photo texture. You have to make sure that you sort of unify your foreground and background. You don't want any tangents going on. So here's the photo texture. For me, this was just to sort of add a concept of light. I'm going to try to find a gradient map, which, as I explained in the last video, is going to help me color my tree. And then I go back in with some more photo textures to just make this tree look a little bit more, nasty and old. there. I'm just deciding that it's easier to get rid of part of the photo texture completely, just keep the light part, erase out the rest. And I actually, with the brush, as you can see on the tree there, I ended up doing these little quick, really round brush strokes, and it makes the tree look like it's, you know, twisting, and it can be really subtle too. I think I only added like maybe 10 strokes there on the kind of near the top. Alright, now we're starting to go back in and paint over some things, and now it's starting to look like a composition a little bit more. We have our character here in the foreground, adding more nasty tendrils, putting more details in like the grass around his feet. Here I'm mostly playing with, you know, how can I make this thing seem even more shadowed and creepy looking. I give it a little nasty hand poking out from the sort of fabric. Couple of highlights. We have this strong beam of light here, so I figure that we have some reflection going on around the character. Painting in those sort of fabric details, going with the dark lines and then bringing out that sort of dark blue to emphasize where the fabric sort of folds on itself. There's the highlight. It's sort of walking into the light a bit, so I made it so it's the head and kind of upper body is being just barely highlighted. That way it's still sort of in the shadows a bit, but it also unifies it with the foreground, or with the rest of the scene a lot better. You can't just have, you know, this sort of elaborate scene and then have this just basically a silhouette in the foreground. You could argue like, oh, it's this, you know, this being is made out of shadow, but I wanted to make it a little bit more real, a little bit more part of reality, I suppose. And here I'm kind of messing with the details. I kind of know how I want this thing to look, but for some reason it keeps looking slightly off to me, so I keep adjusting it a little bit. Some back spikes, because you gotta have back spikes on everything. Adding some more highlights back in. And this is definitely a much more, there's more tree highlights. This is a much more photo bash heavy painting. I go between paintings that completely rely on photo bashing, and then the next day I'll do one that's completely hand painted. It just kind of depends on how you know, what I feel like painting that day. The upside to photo bashing is you get these cool scenes like this. They're a little bit more abstract, but sometimes you get lots of details that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get with just the hand painting. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed this video. I plan on doing even more of these little tutorial type videos, at least to the best of my ability, every week. So we'll see how that goes, but thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.